turn, then why not?
Indulge. You know, if your codex is big, don't hide behind it.
No.
Play it.
Yeah.
Kick everyone's ass.
Yeah, because you enjoy it while you can.
Yeah, it'll show up, go.
Yeah.
So I had a friend who 3D printed 24 grot tanks because he was like, I'm fixated on making this detachment.
You can't blame him. They're great, good, really cool little models. And they did look like they were going to be good in that detachment.
And it was like, it's like this is how it goes. Oh, here's the new codex. You enjoy this. Oh, actually, tell you what, open up the grot tank, rip out the pages because they were going to Legends. And that's something I always don't get with. Hi everyone and welcome to the One Podcast. We're your hosts, Jack
and Dan.
Today we're going to be talking about a bit of a weird topic, but one that it would be good to talk about, basically, the Codex creep.
Yes.
It's in the hobby.
It gave me PTSD in 9th edition.
It did.
And I'm slightly worried that it's kind of creeping back into 10th a little bit.
It's there, but also legitimately at the same time, it's not there.
Yes.
With the latest codexes that have been coming out.
It's not us trying to be like clever, but we'll get into it and explain that. I think we want to talk a bit about what Codex creep is.
Yes.
Why it's back.
Yeah.
Or if it's back, why is it a problem? And if it is a problem, what GW can do about it.
Yeah.
So do you want to kick us off with just a brief explainer for those that don't have trauma like me?
Yeah. Who are maybe new to the hobby as well.
Yeah.
Or who are also maybe suppressing the trauma of 9th edition.
Yeah.
So Codex creep, what is it? Codex creep is kind of one of those things where the next codex that comes out has to always beat the one that came previous to it. And it's like this never-ending kind of snowball effect where if one codex comes out, it might start weak. So very much happened in 9th where the codex came out and it was good. You know, it was baseline okay. It done what it needed to do, yada, yada. But then the next codex that came out just beat it in every single way.
It was markedly stronger.
And then the one after that, better again, beating that one. And then as time goes on, it just makes the previous codexes absolutely useless and nothing can go against the latest codex.
So if you had an early codex that came out in the first year of 9th versus a codex that came out towards the end of 9th, there was a massive power gap. And then even like the changes of the rules that they make, like the balanced data slates, not even them can fix the brokenness to some of the codexes that come out because of what they've done to the codex itself. And it's a strange one because if you read over them, it almost seems like they got the good idea from a previous codex and they're just like, I'm going to implement that, but better in the next one. Yeah. And then that continuously happened in each codex going forward. And that's kind of what a very summarized version of what Codex creep can be. Yeah, and I mean, we just touched on this briefly, but 9th edition Codex creep was bad, wasn't it?
It was probably the worst set of Codex creep out there that I experienced in my time playing. I think that's true. Overall, it was just awful.
I mean, I think we felt a lot on the receiving end as Necron players because Necrons were the second Codex out right at the beginning. And by the end, we were playing like in the last year, we're playing against Tyranids and then like Leagues of Votan and stuff like that. And it was just immeasurably better.
It was those codexes were crazy. Now it's just like it's one of them things where it's like we just no matter what we fielded in the codex to verse the newer codexes, there was just nothing that we could have done.
Yeah, so particularly in terms of what I would call combat effectiveness was where you really noticed it, wasn't it?
Yeah.
So we were not as able to implement damage on our opponents.
No,
and we were very vulnerable to damage from them.
Yeah. And it actually it's funny that we're mentioning it because the only way that they really balanced the 9th edition Necron Codex was not so much of buffing our units, but instead they give us secondaries that were easily achievable, which I'll get onto later. Actually, no, I guess I can talk about them now. Why not? But yeah, so those secondary missions, they again, instead of giving us like a massive points decrease, because they kept on decreasing our units.
They kept trying to cut the points. It didn't make a lot of difference.
Made zero difference. And I think they kept promoting it, be like, we've done like a 10% reduction across the board. And it was like, and it was still trash. We're still the bin. We literally can't do anything more. But they settled on this way, which kind of it didn't rub me the wrong way, but it rubbed a lot of people the wrong way because it just wasn't a fun way of playing Necrons. It became quite boring.
So as you said, they gave us the book. The books used to come out, and we got the Nephilim book came out, and we had 3 secondaries in there, which is basically like stand on the midboard objectives and score, and you just scored points for existing.
That is legit the only way. So
and we went from being a bottom faction to being one of the top factions overnight.
Yeah, and we're still awful. Like we couldn't kill.
We
were easily killed. It was all about just swarming around the objectives. So for anyone who wasn't here around the 9th edition time, the first one was called Purge the Vermin.
Yes.
Now, really good because you scored 2 points for each table quarter that you were in. So when you were holding down the midfield objectives, well, you were kind of already in the 4 table quarters. So you were at least getting 4 points per turn because you were at least doing your kind of 2 deployment ones at the end of the day.
Yes.
So again, easy 4 points each turn. The one after that was Treasure of the Aeons.
Oh, yes.
Very easy one again. You score 2 victory points if you hold 1 objective. You score 3 points if you're holding 2 objective, and you score 5 points for holding 3 objectives.
Yeah. So just playing the game, you got bonus points. Yeah.
Because because you would move up the board, score primary, and now you're scoring secondary because secondary is the exact same as primary.
Yeah.
So why wouldn't you take these basically?
Exactly.
And then the last one, this one's gonna shock you. Ancient machineries. So on 3 objectives, so basically when the game started, each player starting with the opponent would select an objective in the center
in no man's land.
In no man's land. And then up to basically you'd select up to 3 objectives, and you have to hold those 3 objectives. And when you get in there and you hold them, you do an action on them to basically complete the objective.
Yes.
But again, if you think about it, there's in a lot of those game modes in 9th, there was only 3 objectives.
Yeah,
in the center.
midboard, yeah.
And then I think one of them removed an objective.
Probably, yeah.
And it was like, I'm just going to hold the center objectives, and whilst I'm holding them, I'm going to do ancient machineries, and then I'm also doing primary.
Yes, so you could, but it was incredibly easy to score your points.
It was boring as well, which
was.
I think we're so disheartened by it, where we're just like, this sucks.
And there was very few during that kind of Codex creep of 9th. There was very few codexes that came out and didn't upset the meta. It's easier to list them than the ones that did. I think. Yeah,
well, it was one of those things where you could literally be like, the next codex coming out is Tau. It's like, great, Tau are going to go from like a 35% win rate all the way up to a 65% win rate because we just know the formula of you have to beat the next one and you have to beat the next one, and it got repetitive by the end of it, wasn't it?
I mean, the only ones off the top of my head I think of that didn't change it was Knights and Chaos Knights.
I think I was Admech also.
Admech. I think were insane when that came out.
Were they?
Yeah.
Did they not get like a massive like hammer to them? I don't know if I'm thinking about it, but
I mean, Admech got a massive hammer. Custodes, their codex was nerfed within 2 weeks of publication.
Yeah,
and the famous the famous one is Votan, which was nerfed before it actually came out.
Yes,
it leaked, and the community went,
yes,
I've had enough of this,
because there was just so much damage output to it, wasn't it? So basically the codex was leaked, and it wasn't out yet, but it was leaked, and obviously the way publishers work is that they print the book well ahead of time, get it distributed to all the people who need it so that they can sell it. But since it was leaked, they then start changing the rules that was already printed. So by the time that you got this codex, Dan, it was out of date. Out of date. And that was a big backlash as well, wasn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I think there was tournament organisers, I think they were in Germany, if memory serves me, where they literally went, when it leaked, and they went, right, we're banning this faction. Until you've sorted this out, we're not allowing them at our tournaments.
Yeah,
it was that bad.
Yeah, because obviously those tournaments are also kind of helped by GW, who supply certain features and like certain like rules and a bit earlier to them. And that's funny.
Yeah.
funny.
I mean, there was a huge backlash. And that, I think that was that for me anyway, it felt like that and from what you experienced in the community, that felt like the apex or the nadir, I suppose, is a better way of putting it. It was like it was the low point of Codex creep. It was awful, but then the community finally put its foot down and said, we're not having this anymore.
Not having it. We couldn't have it because people would just run it, and it would just be unstoppable. Like you'd be just so disheartened where you've like built your army, painted your army, and you first game was against Votan, you're like, great, like they're already just going to destroy us turn 1, so what's the point of playing, kind of thing. And it was probably the right decision to kind of stop those armies from playing until they were in a competitive zone.
Yes,
because if they weren't, then they're going to outclass everyone.
And it really encouraged meta chasing, because everybody wanted the new hotness, and if you were a competitive player that wanted to be near the top of the tournament rankings, you almost had to, unless you were incredibly good at your, like, as a faction specialist, it was easier to jump onto the new hotness, and you knew that you were going to get a baseline of success from it.
Well, it just upsets the fans as well, because if your codex is one of the worst ones out there, and I mean, like say, I mean, obviously, I'm lucky that I've got a few different armies myself.
Yes.
Not fully painted, bear in mind, and even at the time, it was only my Necrons that was really fully painted. I didn't have any of our armies ready to play in any kind of tournament scene. And again, if you've only got the one army out there and you see this codex creep happening, and your army is unfortunately one of the ones that get absolutely shafted and gets pushed down, you're almost discouraged, or you're just less inclined to play the game, because you're just like, well, what's the point of playing if my army's this bad?
Yes, it was really disheartening. Within your local, what you have branded our bubble meta, but within your friend groups or your local gaming circles, you kind of had to balance yourselves, like saying, right, well, if I'm playing against this army, then he will have to agree that he can't only take one of these units, or you know, he can only take this. There was ways around it to kind of try and, but you shouldn't have to do that.
I would say it just sounds like more work, doesn't it? It's like, it's like, how many play you, Dan, but you can't play this unit. Yeah. Like you've just built and painted a bunch of army. You can't play them, Dan, because they're too powerful against me, and it's like it's just not fun. Like across the board, it's just not good.
So that's our deep sadness from ninth revealed. I mean, we still enjoyed more.
There's more. I hate it all. But no. But ninth edition was bad.
I mean, Codex. I still had a lot of fun in ninth, but Codex Creep would have, if there hadn't been that level of Codex Creep, it would have been a much better edition.
Yes, exactly. It's almost one of them things where it's kind of hard to stop as well, because like if you were releasing a Codex one after another and it was the best one, and let's say like the next one coming out was, I don't know, Tau, because Tau's in front of us right now. If I was a Tau player, and I'd be like, great, my time is coming.
Yeah, my time to shine.
I've suffered for 8 months because of all these Codex creeps that are coming out, that I'm in a very bad state. I can't wait to get my Codex. And then it comes out and it's bad. You're literally then like, oh. Like,
it was like, I mean,
what on earth?
World Eaters was the last one to come out, I think, or possibly Imperial
Guard.
Imperial Guard. They're very late in the edition, like a matter of weeks before the editions change, which is bad. Yeah. But World Eaters wasn't particularly OP, but it was fun to play. So I don't think World Eaters players cared. Yeah. But like Imperial Knights, and I'm sure Chaos Space Marines, I think I remember, weren't massively, certainly not on launch. With a lot of with Votan and Tyranids, you could it was very easy to see that you could go, right, if I can take this and this, and the Tyranids were just strong across the board. they were like
for a long time as well, actually.
Yeah. They were the Eldar of early 10th edition and 9th edition.
They were.
But you could see it would. People got so used to it that if you've been waiting for your faction to be good and then it didn't get good, that was also disappointing. So it's a lose-lose, really.
It is. It really is. And I think like again, you briefly mentioned it there about how like the late game codexes came out, that were Imperial Guard and World Eaters. Although it sucked because I got that nice fancy Imperial Guard one that came out, and I think I only played like 2 games of it before the entire edition was thrown out. And it sucked because it was like, well, I was really looking forward to playing them in this edition, but also at the same time, I've already waited long enough with my Necrons. I was like, everyone knows we need a big refresh. And it still sucked that Codex Creep caused the refresh a lot sooner than what it needed to be.
And I think they did the right thing because of this is one of the reasons we went back to Index Hammer. So in 10th edition, so they did this in 8th. 7th was such a hot mess that in 8th they went, right, hard reset.
Yeah, they did.
And everyone got an index at the beginning of the edition, which is what happened in this.
Really good to do. Yeah, really nice.
That is meant to fix the issues of Codex
Creep.
Like
a rebalance.
But Index Hammer didn't even do that because some of the indexes were so powerful. No way. Like Eldar were just
they still are. They're still up there all the time.
Yeah, still pretty strong.
Yeah, they were like sitting at like 68.
Yeah,
like that.
Ridiculous win rates.
Crazy win rates.
Gene Stealer cults were up there as well.
Yeah,
they were well over 65% win rate. So they didn't quite get that right. And then at the other end, Votan were they were lucky if they were topping a 30% win rate.
Yeah.
So
aye.
But then once we got past the indexes and we started to get the first codexes, do we think that we're getting Codex Creep? Because the early signs from the Space Marines and NIDS books were quite good, weren't they? They didn't seem to be.
Yeah. Well, I mean, even the indexes side of things, I think they nailed them. I'll say nailed them in terms of they balanced them fast and balanced them right.
Yes.
And it was like, hey, look, you're making differences that every faction is seeing. Like, obviously, again, the win rate for Eldar was still quite high, but it was like, oh, hold on, actually, you've made a really good change. The win rate's dropped by like 10%. It's like, hold on, all the other ones, let alone is that dropping, the other ones are rising.
Yeah.
And they're not like not like switching the board round. It's literally like, oh, they're rising up to the point where you're happy with. And it's like, I think by the end of the indexes, when everyone had the index, everyone was in the Goldilocks zone, I think, or like 45
near enough
to at least 57,
it took 3
58.
rounds of nerves, I think, to get Eldar down into the Goldilocks zone instead of above it, but they got there in the end.
But they were even at that point, they were making big changes to the Codex.
They were they were very, very good.
Yeah.
And we saw the first 2 codexes, Space Marines and Nids, and I didn't really think there was a lot of Codex creep there.
No.
Space Marines looked very powerful, but they've
Oath of Moment and
Oath
stuff.
of Moment was good, and then they've kind of nerfed that down again, haven't they? So instead of reroll hits and wounds, it's just hits.
It is hits,
and that's Space Marines are sitting pretty bang average.
Yeah,
largely. Tyranids pretty bang average largely. So
you
would consider them a success in terms of 0 creep.
Yeah, when that Codex came out, I think a lot of Tyranids players were a bit upset because the Crusher Stampede specifically, that didn't have.
It sucks balls.
It sucks because like the rules that have been written, and again, I do want to discuss this later on, but the rules that they writ just didn't make sense. So like you can have 2 Carnifexes, a squad of 2, so you got 2 Carnifexes in a squad. You only gain the benefit of your Stampeder. There's like 2 benefits. You get like 1+1 to hit and +1 to wound. Yeah. So if they're below starting strength, so you have to take a wound, you get +1 to your hit roll. Great. Well, happy days. They're big units. They've got a lot of wounds. You can manage that. That's fine. But they only gain the benefit of the +1 to wound when you are below half strength. Right. So you have a squad of 2. You lose 1. You're still not below technically half, because then if you add up the wounds, say they've got 10 wounds and they lose 5, you're not below half, you're on half. You need to be below half. So that one that's left then has to then
get to below half its wounds.
Exactly, to gain the benefit. So you've already lost half the unit and more, and then you're getting that second benefit.
In terms of wounds, you have to lose 3/4 of your wounds before you get below half strength, which is mad.
It's not great. Tie that in, because those 2 Carnifexes can be attached, led by the Old One Eye, which is another Carnifex. Lovely lore, check them out. It's great. But this doesn't make sense. You gain no benefits. So again, the way the rules are, you are being led. So you've got the 2 Carnifexes plus being led. In order for that to get below half strength, you have to lose 1 Carnifex, then you've got 1 Carnifex, and you've got 1 leader. So you've only lost a third.
Yeah, you've only lost a third of your unit.
So you're not below half. This Carnifex then loses, then gets destroyed.
Right.
You're now lost 2/3.
Yes.
On paper, great. I'm going to get the +1 to wound, but you don't. Because when you lose the squad, your HQ becomes its own squad. So now you've got to lose more than half your wounds on your Carnifex, your Old One Eye.
So the actual Carnifexes there is no point where they can get the second part of the detachment rule.
Exactly.
That's bad writing.
And then again, obviously you've got all the other big monster ones like the Norm Emissary and whatnot. Again, yes, they can get below half to gain the benefit, but then like when they start getting below half, you're kind of a bit like, oh, well, I want to keep them alive, but at the same time, I need them. They benefit more when they're in the thick of it.
It was a weird.
It's a risky one.
Yeah, it's a weird attachment rule because it only comes in when you're getting your ass kicked, and then, like you said, if your opponent's able to take that many wounds off them, then in theory he's probably able to finish them off. So you're probably going to get 1, maybe 2 turns max where it actually comes into play.
If 1 max, The games I've played, it's just as soon as they get below half, they're just a big target because they're like, all right, cool, I'll finish them off, as they say.
Yeah.
So that's one of the big things that they need seeing. So after that, we had
Necrons and Admech, and this is where we got our first taste of the fact that of the pairs theory, that there's 2 sets of writers for these codexes.
Yes. So I didn't see much of it in the Space Marine and Nids one, but the Necron one, Admech one. Do you want to give a brief description of what we think?
I mean, they were night and day. So the Necron one was pretty strong, if we're being fair, and obviously we're probably slightly biased as Necron players. It didn't make us ridiculously overpowerful, but it made them quite strong.
They did. Yes, they did.
So I think that's a fair assessment, but the Admech one was absolute trash.
It was awful. People were kicking off about it.
Yeah, there's been such a kick-off that GW has and it reaffirmed this in their Meta Watch video this week, that they are working on new rules for the Admech. So actually the code, they can't fix them with points. It's so bad that they're having to give them bonus rules to make them good.
Almost like the start of 9th, where they were like, all right, well, we can't fix it by the balanced data states. Let's and obviously in 9th they didn't do any of this sort of stuff. They were just like, all right, well, what can we do based on what we've got? So in 10th, it's, although they're bad, it's nice to see them just being like, all right, I'm just going to add more rules to it.
Yes. So 9th edition, we were in was a stage of the game or a phase of the game where if they would get rules wrong, where Codex would usually because it was too strong, and then they would have to kind of typically nerf it with points, but there was imbalance in the game, and they weren't very reactive to fix it.
No.
10th edition, there is imbalance in the game, but they're trying to fix it quicker. And then fingers crossed, 11th edition we might get to a point, or 12th, where there isn't the imbalance in the first place to get the rules right.
I had the GW actually monitor every single game that you play, and then they're next year changing the rules as you play. But no, like I say, this was definitely the first sightings that we've seen where we believe there's two writers who like don't talk to each other and they hate them. I think, again, we must make up a theory here. There's two Codex writers and they hate each other. They don't work well. And that's why they're like, oh, okay, well, you just can't make one Codex together. Okay, well, both of you make your own. Both of you play the game. Both of you separately. Don't talk to each other. And you guys just do what you want. And it's not working.
No. I mean, it works for 50% of the fan base, but not.
That's true. Yeah, that's true.
For GW, that's quite a good strike rate, to be honest. They're probably 50% are happy.
50%, yeah, my profit's going up by 50%. You know, so that was the first thing that we're seeing.
Yes, then we got Tau and Dark Angels, and we've got a similar contrast there. The Tau book's pretty decent, isn't it?
It's pretty decent. Yeah. Lots of shooting wise, a lot of revamps. Obviously, they got the Crute as well.
Yeah,
great addition. Everyone loved that.
They've done a great job of bringing the Crute back into it.
Loads of new models.
This feels like a couple of decent ways to play Tau competitively, and they've got quite a lot of tools in the box. You know, to make
variety. Variety, but
Yeah.
a good variety as well.
Yeah.
It's like, because I mean, again, we briefly mentioned before with the NIDs, but they did have a lot of variety in terms of what they can and can't do.
Yes.
Some of them good, some of them bad, but still variety nonetheless. And again, Tau, very much a similar thing. Obviously, you've got the Farsight, you know, where he focused mainly on battle suits, which is great. You've then got the addition of the Crute attachments, which is new. Great, again, a great addition. Backed up with a massive revamp of their models. Some really good models coming out there. And some really good abilities where like they just reappear. Like you're destroying an entire unit and the crew are like, oh, I'm back. And they're just like a massive squad of 20 just come back in. You're like, oh, man, I've just destroyed you. Why are you back?
Yeah, I do like that. I do like that ability in 10th. It's good. But Dark Angels, conversely, again, it wasn't as much of an outcry with the AdMech because it isn't as bad, to be fair, but the Dark Angels fans were really quite sad.
They were.
Because all the build-up was really good. There's an awful lot of Dark Angels players out there. And their index wasn't too bad, but the Codex kind of nerfed them a bit. Like there's nerfs to the Lion and a couple of other units. So they're trying to fix that with some points adjustments, but it feels like sad times for Dark Angels players.
Well, I remember going to our recent tournament and just kind of talking to them about it, a couple of Dark Angels players. They were literally just like, I wish we were back in index. It was that bad.
And
it was like,
nobody should feel that way. In the same way as you shouldn't be Codex creep. There shouldn't be, I don't know what you call this, Codex cramp, where your Codex is actually like worse than your index card. Index, that shouldn't happen.
Nah, should not happen.
I mean, somebody's been specifically paid to sit down and look at the index and make it, and expand on it and make it and improve on it without without making it OP. And that's your job remit, and they've screwed it.
It's like they've got like two different. It's like, again, they've got like two writers for these codexes, but they both have different job descriptions. You make it good, you make it bad. And if that's the case, they're doing a great job.
Well, we saw the same again with Orks and Custodians.
This is probably
the biggest contrast.
The biggest contrast in there, and I mean. It's actually funny. I'll get the picture and put it on screen. But have you seen the latest Meta Watch that was released on? I don't know if it was on the official one, but it was like the actual competitive.
Oh, the stat check,
Custodians on the Meta Watch.
Wow!
Because no one's playing. There's no basically.
They've just dropped off the competitive scene.
There's no data for the competitive scene for the Custodians, and they're on 0% because they've got none.
That is so sad.
And it's honestly like this is the biggest one. I mean, Orks. There's a couple of things which I dislike about what they've done with the Codex, which we'll get on in just a second. But in terms of the power, I mean, Bully Boys, great detachment, really good on what they can and can't do. Really good models to back up that detachment as well. You know,
and I think if you look at Necrons, if you look at Tau, and if you look at Orks, there are at least 2 detachments within each book, so you're not limited to one build that is competitively viable. There is a couple of choices. So Necrons you can play Canoptic Court or Hypercrypt. Orks you can play Bully Boys or something else, and so on and so on. So there's giving that amount of richness and choice in a codex is really good.
It's really good. It's really good. And again, I don't know what the writers are thinking. It's awful to see the custodies now. Again, if you think about it, you've been playing your index for like 7 months now. You've been looking forward to your codex. Your codex comes out and it's legitimately unplayable to a competitive mindset, to a competitive scene, which it's just not good. Not good at all.
It needs some serious.
Needs a bit of living. Good. But I think that's it, right? For the codexes, that kind of thing that we've seen.
I mean, if we're saying that codex creep is defined as putting a faction on top of the meta, then I think we can argue it is happening to some degree, because the Necron codex put the Necrons pretty much on top. Tau codex is pretty strong, and the Orc one looks really strong.
It does look strong.
That one's we'll have to rein that one in a little bit. That's definitely some creep there.
Yeah, probably worth mentioning. It's not to do with it's like more of a segue than a codex creep kind of thing. But what they've done with the Orcs one, again, this is where I think Games Workshop need to work on their communication between their different departments. But there was that thing in the Orc codex where they had like the grot tanks that were available. Yeah. Obviously, we have a friend who briefly mentioned it before, but where the codex came out and there was a few like kind of pictures and stuff, and then everyone was like, "Oh, this detachment is going to be fantastic with the grot tanks because the grot tanks does this," and they were still selling them, so you can still go buy them and you can still buy them online. So a few people went out and bought a few grot tanks. So I had a friend who 3D printed 24 grot tanks because he was like, "I'm fixated on making this detachment."
You can't blame them. They're great, really cool little models, it was. And they did look like they were going to be good in that detachment. And
it was like, it's like this is how it goes. Oh, here's the new codex. You enjoy this. Oh, actually, tell you what, open up the grot tank, rip out the pages because they were going to Legends. And that's something I always don't get. Where it's like, here's the codex, enjoy it. Oh, I forgot to pull something out. Sorry, and they rip out some of the stuff that goes to Legends. I think that's a bit silly.
We're in a weird halfway house with some of these things where GW is trying to appease fans that have already got these models, so it doesn't want to say you can't play with them anymore, but really you can't play with them.
You can't play with them anymore.
And by within another edition or two of 40k, by the time we're at 12th edition at the latest, these units won't exist. That's pretty much my guess.
Start selling them now. Is kind of what we're seeing.
Or they get a range refresh and they come back and they're actually come back.
And they come back and they're like, oh, but you can't play the old ones. You got to buy. You've got to buy because they're Primaris Orcs. That's how that is. But yes, it's. Do you like them how they're coming in pairs, or do you think it's?
I do like. I like how quickly they're getting codexes out in this edition, is because that was a criticism, as we just talked about. Some players had to wait, and quite big factions. No, not that any faction should have to wait.
No,
but Imperial Guard are a very popular faction and have been for years. Loads of people love World Eaters, and they literally had a couple, like you were saying with your Guard, 2 games, and then
2 games gone.
Leviathan came out. So they're expecting you to build and paint all of this stuff and own it, and then but play with an 8th edition codex, which sucks compared to the 9th ones. And then you literally got a handful of games in, paid 45 quid for your codex or whatever, and then it was out, and it was
gone,
and you got an index again.
You could barely sell it because obviously no one wants it. It's waste there. Now, so very odd.
I am pleased that they are addressing that across the board with the codexes. I think we're seeing signs of improvement. So we're seeing.
I think comparing it to 9th, it's a massive boost, massive grade.
Big improvement, isn't it?
Big improvement. I'm still disappointed with how some amazing and then some are just awful, but it is what it is.
And in terms of codex creep being, I mean, is there any merit to codex creep that we can talk about at all? Is it ever a good thing?
It encourages meta chasing. As you say, right?
For GW sales, you would guess, but I think, and
for profit margins.
We've seen this as well on firsthand. Is I think it actually encouraged 3D printing more.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
Because if you wanted the new hotness and you couldn't get it from GW or it's too expensive,
the limited run kind of stuff that they do.
Then
that's a good point actually.
It and spray it 3 colours and away you go.
That makes perfect sense. And obviously 3D printers are so much accessible now than what they were. It's a lot easier to get done.
I don't think in that respect, I think as much as GW might have made some money from things that are new hotness, I think more players will be more inclined to just buy proxy models or print their own.
And the more I'm looking at kind of getting a few little models myself, just on the tricky side, just to test out before I kind of make the plunge into buying the official models. It's just I every time I look, I get more and more surprised on how good the models are. After you briefly saw my
emissary is looking really nice.
It was a free model that I found online.
Free STL.
Took me 30 seconds to find it, and I was like, print me 3 of these, please. OC 15 on each of them, please. But
the quality and the detail on the models of 3D prints now can be. I mean, you can still get some dubious ones, but generally speaking, it's all moving in the right direction.
It is.
We've just done another podcast about that where we touch on that. So
check it out.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, is there any good thing about Codex Creep? For me, it's that like little boost. Again, you've been waiting 6 months. Like again, look at the orc one for example. You've been waiting for a long time. Orcs haven't been in the best of spots. During their index and whatnot, and during 9th.
Index Hammer wasn't great, and 9th wasn't great for them, was it?
So getting this boost kind of is like a nice refresh. You've maybe parked them for a while, and you've been playing another army for a long time. Getting a fresh Codex with a little bit of extra power that compared to everybody else, kind of is that little boost of like, oh, I'm going to get them back out. This is I've been looking for something different. I've been looking for something new.
What we're experiencing in Codex Creep, and if we can call it that, and I think we can, but what we're experiencing is Codex Creep on a much smaller level, and for a much shorter time period than we did in 10th.
Yes.
So if we go back to what we were talking about before about if a Codex comes out, does an army deserve its time to shine? Like you say, like for players to get excited about it.
There's an argument to it, isn't there?
There's an argument to say that a little bit that where to get players excited is a reasonable thing.
Yeah.
And as long as it's addressed fairly quickly, so that they don't allow it to rumble on for a year. They just like dominate the meta.
I'm looking at you, Eldar players. Your index is awful.
Yeah, I mean, Tyranids in 9th. I mean, it was probably only 6 to 9 months, but it felt like a year that they were on. They were just quite oppressive.
Yeah.
So yeah, I can.
You can kind of almost see the appeal to making them a bit more better. To be like, check them out.
What we've also got here, I think is worth talking about, is that it's not incremental Codex creep either.
Yeah.
So if a good new Codex comes out like Necrons, if it's a little bit OP, they tweak it and bring it back down almost immediately.
Yeah.
So we have a couple of months where I go, this is great.
Yeah.
And we all rush out and try and buy whatever's the new hotness, like
Immortals
with Tesla. But then we're brought back down to earth, and then somebody else's Codex comes out and they enjoy their time in the spotlight. But what we're not seeing is like Necrons came out and they are one step above the indexes,
the one prior,
and then Tau come out and they're one step above Necrons, and so on and so on. And
that was like a lot of that build, isn't it?
That was the big problem in 9th edition, and they seem to have nailed that.
Yeah.
So I don't mind what they're doing now is the sales tactic of like making something quite good, so that people want to jump on it. Yeah. But then within a couple of months or so, it's going to be it'll be someone's other turn on the wheel.
Yeah,
and I don't mind that.
It's a Game of Thrones style. Where it's just like it's like the wheel ever changes. It's actually a pretty good example. I like that one.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, like say apart from that, I don't think there's much more good at Codex Creep.
No.
Obviously, I mean, we don't want to say it, but it obviously inflates GW's profit at the end of the day. It's like, hey, look at this brand new model. It's the best model out there.
It's a sales
Go buy
tactic.
it.
And we've seen it.
We all know it.
They're very good at this, and they've got even better at it in this edition. So that there's been battle boxes for almost all not Necrons, thanks GW, but that's we're thinking maybe we didn't get one with our Codex because we might get one
like a big range refresh.
We might get one for when the Pariah Nexus mission deck drops. Maybe they'll do a Pariah Nexus battle box. Who knows? But yeah, in terms of battle boxes have done a good job. So your Codex comes out. There's a new battle box. There's a big package there with a lovely bow tied around it. Your Codex often comes in you can buy a box with the Codex in it, can't you?
Yeah.
So all of that is a good sales tactic, and we don't mind that. I don't think.
No. Well, unless it was the Tyranid one. I don't remember that one. It was during 9th where they did a new battle box, and it was like, oh, get all these gaunts, and it was like, oh, all these new ones. So everyone jumped on it because it was like it was an amazing deal. And it was like, oh, I need gaunts and homo gaunts and such. It's like I want to buy all this big box because you get loads of them.
Yeah.
And then like a month later, they're like, oh,
we've got
new
homo
gaunts. Let's get them. And it was like, I haven't finished building
80 of the old models.
It was 80 models in it, wasn't it?
There was loads.
So many. I did buy it. It was very silly.
But yeah, I think in that respect, I think I'm not a massive fan of Codex Creep from 9th edition, but how it's happening in 10th, I'm relatively comfortable.
And I think that's, again, we've briefly mentioned it, but it's because they're doing such good changes and fast, and it's like, oh, yeah, cool. Oh, something is big because it slipped through the net, right? Patched.
Yeah.
And it's like, and it's not to a degree patched into the ground, and we see that very evidently with Eldar. Codex came out, it was tough, it was good. Also, the Index came out, it was good. We're going to give you a nerf. Oh, all right. We've reviewed it. It's not as a big a nerf as we wanted. Let's give you a little nudge to not make them go from like top to bottom.
Yes.
I think AdMech did suffer that at one point. I forgot what it was.
Yes,
where
it did.
Codex came out, beautiful. immense, and then it was just like you're too good, and you're going to be bad for the next 3 editions. And they
were insane when they came out in 9th edition. I think it was reasonably early on, certainly around the midfield, if you like. And they were too good, and they did have to address that. And then, but then they just didn't look. They went straight to the bottom and just stayed there for a long time. So admech players deserve. I'm glad that GW are addressing. Like you said, they are. It's not an excuse for bad writing. You should get Codex right first time. But things are moving in the right direction.
Definitely.
And in terms of us, how are we impacted by Codex creep?
For us, obviously we were Necrons, so it was primarily dominant during the like the 9th edition side of things, where all Codex came out. We had our little small time to shine to a degree, and then every Codex after that, it was just the next army to absolutely
the new
hotness.
Yeah. I think there was still the Codex was so big in 9th. There was still some ways to play. Like I ended up, particularly because I like the style, I ended up playing like all Scorpex. It was a Scorpex.
Well, to be fair, now that we mention it, sorry to interrupt you there. Sorry. Now that you mention it, I remember a few situations where the Codex was so bad, I started trying absolutely
all sorts of crazy
random scenarios because they're the only units I had. So I was like, I'm just gonna. And I really remember the little story that I had where I versed one of our friends, Rob, when it comes to his Imperial Knight.
Oh yeah.
I was like, all right, I'm losing all the time. I know I'm going to lose, and I'm going to lose this battle for sure. Yeah. I was like, tell you what, I'm just going to bring warrior blobs, and I'm going to back them up with all the reanimation that I could do.
All right. Yeah.
So although at that time, the reanimator had to have a line of sight to the warriors, but I was like, all right, well, I can cheese it in a way where I keep it hidden but just see one warrior.
Yeah.
And I was like, really just...
You could kind of tail a warrior back so it could get...
It was like with the indirect, I was like... Oh, not the indirect. I was like, with the walls. I was like, all right, well, I'll have one on one side of the wall. And the rest of them, I've got all 20 of them up the board.
Yeah.
And I remember holding an objective in the middle. And that was the time where you could stack stuff. Because again, you have like units in aura abilities around you. So I had like, obviously the Necrons who were like toughness 5 or toughness 4 at the time. I had 20 of them alongside a Technomancer that was close by.
Yeah.
They gave obviously reanimation back.
Yeah.
I had the Reanimator that gave them the +1 to the reanimation rules at the time. It worked differently back in 9th.
Yes.
And then I think I had like I had the Chronomancer that gave him like an Invuln save or something like that.
Yes, because characters weren't attached to units, just had to be close to them, didn't they?
Exactly. So I just blobbed out all my units, moved them up. He fired, I think it was like 460 points off the knight, like the biggest knight that he could, and he took out 18 models. And I stood there and I was like, oh, okay. I was like, this sucks. I was like, tell you what, I was like, 2 survived. Happy days. Perfect. I was like, I'm going to do all my reanimation rules. And since I'd done so many stackable effects, ruled like a god. And initially 12 came back. So I had about 6 left. And I was like, oh, this is... And he was already mad. He was standing there like, that is just a ridiculous roll. And I was like, yeah, mate, this is going to... I'm sorry, mate. And then the last 6 that I had, I rolled, I got another 5 back. So he fired 460 points into my blob of warriors. And at the time, the warriors, since we had so many points decreases...
Yeah, they weren't
a lot of money. I think at the time, I don't know what they were, but they were very cheap at the time.
They were 10 or 11 points, I think.
Something like that. I want to
say 11, yeah.
Probably 11 points. So again, 200 points versus like 460. And then he did killed 1. And I was just like, this is funny. I was like, I've still lost the game. Don't get me wrong, but I'm very much happy that I managed to bring back
it's like
so
a moral
many.
Victory, isn't it?
It was.
Yeah.
So I think at the time, it's like, although I was going through a very hard phase of Codex creep, I think that really helped me learn my army a lot better. I got through the thick of it to then just know exactly what my army done, so that when my army did get good, I was like, oh, I'm now a lot better because I went through the thick of it, and now I've came out with a bit more boost. Like I'm a better player overall.
I definitely feel the same way. I think it's even if your faction is a bit low in the meta, and we're both kind of contrarians like that. It's like, oh, my faction's on a 40% win rate. Is it right? Well, I'm going to see what I can do.
I'm going to make it work.
But there's a lot to be said for sticking with a faction even through tough times to do that. So, and I think both of us buy and play for the love of the faction. We don't meta chase. To
a degree,
I will buy units that are hot for my faction. convention.
Yes.
I'll unashamedly do that. But generally speaking, by the time I've built, because I'm so slow, by the time I've built and painted them, they're not hot anymore anyway.
We've done the same for Immortals, didn't we?
Yeah.
We bought
Tesla
the Immortals.
like,
yeah. We were like, oh, let's get them. I think I did buy, like, again, off eBay. I think I picked them up from eBay because they're just cheap and such. But I did have a few of them myself, so I finally built them up. By the time I built them up, I got the nerf, and I was like, well, they're still playable, but I just don't want to play them as much.
OCD Dan likes to have at least 2 of each unit in the Codex. So I didn't have Tesla Immortals, and now I do. And at some point in the future, they'll be, they're still quite good. They're usable.
Well, they'll come back around.
Everything comes back around sooner or later, doesn't it?
And I think, like,
apart from the convergence of Dominion, which
that's these fellas. If everyone's not seeing, these are useless. They are terrain,
beautiful but useless. Yeah.
Yes. It's just an odd one, isn't it? Like, it's just...
I think having several armies can help if you are one of those players that feels the pain. And sometimes in your local meta, which is usually what affects players, unless you're a complete competitive player and you're playing different people every week almost, your local meta is what really matters, your bubble meta.
Yeah.
And if you're having a hard time in that because your army's not doing well or there's Codex, then having another army to fall back on
is always nice as well. I mean, it might be a little hot take here, but is it wrong to indulge in your Codex creep? Like, because
I don't think so.
Like, obviously, it's not your fault that your Codex is better than everybody else's. So do you take advantage? I mean, obviously, we've got units that are in the meta in our side of things. Like, is it wrong for us to like running that unit kind of thing? And like, people will throw that label out of like, oh, look at you, meta chaser. It's like, well, no, I've had this unit for years. Like, just because I'm using it now doesn't mean I'm a meta chaser.
No, exactly.
Yes, it does.
Well, I mean,
but is it like
within our friend group, we play quite competitively because that's what we like. We like to smash up, smash against each other and see who really come out on top. And so in that respect, you do have to lean into it. It's like we were talking to off camera a few weeks ago about our friend Lewis who plays Death Guard. He's come up with an absolutely filthy Death Guard list that's really really hard to beat.
Yeah,
and he was stomping so many people. He was like, I'm going to withdraw these and play Chaos Space Marines for a while. And I was like, no, you've got to see how far you can take them. We want the chance to
beat you. Yeah. When we go for that thing where it's like, okay, one person in our thing finds an absolute disgusting list, and they run that for so long, and it's like, the only time that we ever switch that list out is when one person beats them. Yeah. And then for whatever reason, whoever beats them at the time then becomes the next person to win 7 games in a row. And it's like, all right, they've now designed the list that is the ultimate list. Everyone has just dogpiles that one person. It's like, we're putting in the chat, be like, oh, who wants the game? And it's like, whoever mentions, like, if Lewis put in that chat at the time, I think everyone's like, I want to verse you. Yeah, I'm going to beat the crap out of you. I want to be the one to take his own.
We've got it with other Dan now at the moment, and his orks, like his Bully Boys list is strong. But I'm like, right, I'm gonna make this work. I'm gonna figure this out. And it's a good test. It's how you improve as a player, isn't it?
You do.
So I think, from my perspective, I think I'm fine with it. I'm fine with it as it is. The most important thing is with such a diverse faction base and player base is that everybody gets some time in the sun.
Yes,
and that time is relatively short. You know, the wheel keeps, as we talked about before, as long as that wheel keeps turning, then your faction or factions get their little spotlight, and their opportunity to go and kick all your friends' asses, and then it's somebody else's turn.
Indulge, if your Codex is big, don't hide behind it. No. Play it, kick everyone's ass.
Yeah, because you enjoy it while you can.
It'll show up. Go. Beat them over as long as you can. I mean, in terms of kind of like, is there a best way to handle Codex creep, do you reckon?
I think the way they're doing it now is good. I think it's so I'm relatively happy with this. Give a new Codex, well, I say good, 50% good, because the other half of the Codexes are bad. So they need to address that. But in terms of how Codex creep is working so far in 10th, I like it. I'm happy with it. And as long as this continues without it, we're starting to see that climbing, as you talked about, the ladder of
ladder effect,
ladder of OP-ness. That we don't want to see that.
We definitely don't want to see that there. I do like how they're handling it at the minute, especially with the balance changes that they're making. They seem to have a bit of obviously props to the meta. I forgot the name. Stu, was it Stu? No.
Yeah, Stu Black, isn't it?
Yeah, Stu Black. Props to him he seems to have a good handle on getting data at the minute. Like, he's obviously the meta watch that's happening. He balanced the indexes again. Took him 3 times, but every single time we've done it, I mean, again,
it got closer and closer.
It got closer and closer. We can't just say, all right, cool, the first index change that you make is going to be the balance forever, Like, it's going to take time. Everyone has to understand that. but I think he did get there to a very fast standard.
Yeah.
Again, comparably to 9th, where 9th was never in a balanced state.
No.
They had 10th balance within 3 changes.
Yes.
Fantastic.
It does deserve props. My one criticism is the last 2 MetaWatch videos, they haven't given us a league table or talked about who's above or below the Goldilocks.
And some of them were missing off the data.
And last time, some of them were just
missing. We'll cover that in one of our last podcasts.
Yes,
but some, I can't remember who they were now, but some of them were missing. And again, the one I mentioned before, Custodies, they're off the table right now. And maybe that's again why. Well,
I think at the moment this is it. So if you look at the data from some people call the proper data from someone like StatCheck, where they
proper
have
data, innit?
Proper data. They obviously update on a weekly basis of all the tournaments that just happened that weekend, and it's so check it on like a Monday. You're getting live data really for what's just happened.
Aye.
And that their version of the win rates are really interesting. There are quite a few that are above that Goldilocks zone of 55, and there's quite a few that are below it again.
And again, it's really good. Obviously, they get their data. The board get the data from official sources. It's just some of them are looking at different
GW
tables.
Nobody knows exactly how GW do it. StatCheck obviously pick it from are looking at
like
all the competitive data they can get. So any event where you get ITC points
which is probably the better source of data, right? Because like if people aren't playing them competitively, then there's something wrong. Yeah. Or there's an indication that, all right, well, what's going on?
I mean, I suppose GW has to look at it for the filthy casuals as well, I suppose, because the game needs the game needs to be balanced for everybody to a certain
and a casual
degree.
scene as well.
You would assume that if you're looking at competitive data where players that are good at the game of a reasonably similar level, then that should tell you what a faction can do.
I think for me as well, it's just making sure that the data that they're getting is actually accurate and correct. Whereas obviously tournament, what side of things typically are accurate because you're signed up to like ITC. Obviously,
you're doing it through best coast pairings and stuff. It's good data.
It's good data. It's obviously broken down per turn. And obviously the secondary missions are the ones obviously recorded as well. So it's all the data's all there.
It's good data and it's rich data.
100%. Whereas if they're using unofficial channels like casual tournaments that might not be on the scene of GW, but they're still using their data, it's kind of an easy way for people to be swayed. And since they're not competitive, maybe no offense to the small casual ones because they're always good, but what if the not good players play a good game?
Exactly. Yeah.
And then that skews the data at the end of the day.
Yeah, it does. And I think
couple things I have to keep an eye on.
If we look at that StatCheck data, then a suspicious man might say that the reason they haven't showed us their MetaWatch data is because the game is diverging from balance instead of becoming more balanced.
But then surely that's what they want to promote, though. It's like, oh, we've seen this. We're sorry. We're addressing it. This is what we're going to be looking at.
GW's never been very good.
Yeah, sorry. I'm thinking too kind of.
But you would like to think so. But I think my guess is that they don't like to tell you when things are not going according to plan.
Yeah.
As we've just talked about, they are very good. They're reactive. They're generally they're balanced index hammer.
Yeah.
Codex hammer is going to be a new set of challenges.
Yeah.
But as long as they do that quickly, I don't think anybody really minds, do they?
Yeah. No, not really. And
so I would rather they came out like you say and be honest and just say, right, look, actually we got all of this right for indexes. Codexes are kind of shook it up a bit, but we're working on it.
And the reason why I think they should just do that anyways is because the data's out there. It's already there. It's like there's already websites that publish.
Well, this was the first thing I did. So watch the MetaWatch. I love a MetaWatch video. So watch the MetaWatch video. I was like, oh, that's really interesting. The no table, and I thought, hang on, there was no league table last time.
Yeah.
Right. Well,
it's a good talking point as well.
I'm going to go and look up what the it was the first thing I did.
You can literally just Google it and be like, oh, what's the latest meta? And it's all these things. So the data's there. Yeah, and again, you can go on these ITC points and see who's winning. So
yes.
It just doesn't make sense.
No.
It's a bit silly on their part, I think.
Be more honest.
Yes, Stu.
Yeah.
Watching you.
Yeah.
We know.
Well, he hasn't even been on the last 2 videos. It's his sidekick. I think is he called? I want to say James, but that's
James?
not
Fair enough.
I don't know. I can't remember his name. He's very good, actually. He really comes across really articulate.
I've not seen a bad one. I do like the way, and again, I think that's why I think people tune in. And again, if you are doing it, I mean, what if they're not doing it to show us what's good and what's bad? Why are they doing these MetaWatch videos?
Yeah, so I mean, the name, the clue's in the name. It's called MetaWatch. Tell us what the meta is.
Yeah, what is it? What is it? Don't make me go elsewhere, you know? That's silly.
But that aside, I think this has been a really interesting discussion, actually, but I feel, after we've talked it through, that I'm reasonably comfortable. I don't feel anxious about Codex creep as whereas in 9th
I'm a bit more settled. 9th was just like, it was a bad time to join because it was like during 9th I think I was legitimately like, oh, you want to get into the hobby, right? Let's go see what the latest codexes.
Yeah.
And then that'll be your best chance to get into the hobby. Whereas in 10th, I can now comfortably say, I'll tell you what, pick an army you enjoy.
Yes.
Because now you're going to enjoy it regardless of where it's at.
Yeah.
You might suffer for a short time during certain peaks, but we've got confidence. We've actually not even confidence. We've got the data to prove that they are making the right changes based on the indexes changes. So that's not based on personal opinion. That's actually just now facts at the end of the day.
Well said.
Yeah. For me as well, it's like they're making good changes. I just want to see it continue until the end of 10th.
Yes.
Fingers crossed. We can hope.
Good.
We can hope.
Well, I think that ties it up, doesn't it?
I think so. I mean, are you personally impacted by Codex creep apart from that? But
no, I'm fine.
Yeah.
Like I said, I'm comfortable with where they are. I would like to. Even where I've only played orcs a couple of times, I'm like, oof, that hurts.
Yeah.
Ooh. Yeah. But it's,
why?
It's a different feeling to oof, that hurt in 9th, and it's going to hurt for the next 6 months. Do you know what I mean? So I can live with it.
I think I'm the same. I think I'm not that massively impacted again based on what we've just said before.
Yeah.
Ended it quite nicely. I think it's going in the right direction.
Yeah. If we're going to experience Codex creep, let's have it like 10th and not 9th, and let's keep it this way.
Keep it this way. Yeah. Definitely. Perfect. Yep. I'm all happy with that.
Good. As usual, I forgot to ask you before, but if you have enjoyed this and stuck with us to the end, thank you very much, and please do the Holy Trinity, like, share, and subscribe.
Yeah,
it means a lot to us as a relatively small channel. And also leave your comments. We've got a great community there that loves commenting on Facebook and Instagram, and also on YouTube. Let us know your experiences of Codex creep in earlier editions and how you're finding it in 10th.
Yeah, thank you.